Good evening and welcome. My name is Josh Beadle, and I am the Executive Director of Waukegan Main Street. And today we're going to walk through the application process for the Back to Business grant available with the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Now, if you have not heard about this Back to Business grant, it is currently available for a number of businesses. The Illinois DCEO will be awarding up to $250 million dollars with this grant. And the application process is pretty basic and simple, and we're just going to walk through it today. So I'm going to share my screen with everyone. And the easiest way to get to the information provided by the Illinois DCEO is to actually just go to Google and Google in Back to Business Grant DCEO. And the very first hit will take you to the grant program overview. This overview screen will give you some basic information about the eligibility requirements for the grant program. And you'll see that the major items that are important about the eligibility is that you have to have had a decrease in revenue of approximately $5,000 from 2019 to 2020. They are also making some exceptions for the grant. So the grant has been designed to specifically target those who were hit during the COVID-19 pandemic who have not necessarily received a grant yet, though many others are still encouraged to apply and can apply. Now, the first thing you're going to do after you've checked the eligibility guidelines available here is you're going to hit the apply button. And when you hit the apply button, it's going to pop up a new screen. Don't be alarmed. And it's going to take you to a website provided by the Allies for Community Business. Now, this screen is going to ask you to register to the grant. Don't be alarmed. Just use your regular email address and register. This way, you can actually save your grant application and come back in the future. So the first thing you're going to do on page 1, and by the way, you're only looking at 7 pages in total for this grant. On the first page, you're going to have to fill out some owner details for yourself. It's going to ask you which language you'd prefer for the application. And by the way, just this first screen, I filled it out for myself. Your first name, if you're the owner, your last name, if you're the owner, your email address, your title, your social security or ITIN number, the address, your city, state, zip code, and then the business legal name, the business DBA, if you have one, your business EIN, and then it'll ask you to answer the following questions. It'll ask you your gender, and it'll provide a drop down of male, female, other, or prefer not to respond. What race you identify with, and you can also prefer not to respond here as well. Then it will ask you if the business owner is Hispanic or Latinx, or if the business owner is a veteran. It will also ask you if the business owner is a person with disabilities. And then you click next. On the second page, it's going to ask you for some contact information. And it's very basic information. It's going to ask for the business phone number, the business website, the business address, the business structure, how you're legally organized, and there should be a drop down here for you to pick which one you are. The industry, and then it'll ask you this question. Do you attest that your business is not in any of the following lines of business? And it will ask you if you are an independent contractor that does not operate as a sole proprietorship, a child care provider that has not received a child care restoration grant, or that has, a private club, a business engaged in speculative activities, a business that earns more than a quarter of its annual net revenue from lending activities, a business that derives at least 33% of its gross annual revenue from legal gambling activities, a business engaged in pyramid sales, a business engaged in activities that are prohibited by federal law, a business that derives a majority of its income as an owner of real property that leases that property to a tenant or tenants under a lease agreement, a business principally engaged in teaching, instructing, counseling, or indoctrinating religion or religious beliefs, a government-owned business entity, a business primarily engaged in political or lobbying activities, a business that manufactures or sells at wholesale tobacco products, liquor, or that manufactures or sells firearms, a nightclub or strip club, an employment agency, a pawn shop, a liquor store, a storage facility, or any of the establishments labeled above. Or if you're a business in which a majority owner has a financial or familial connection to a director, principal shareholder, or leadership member of the department or department's partner under the program. If you attest that you are any of those businesses included, then you are not eligible. After that, it'll ask you, please select the industry that best represents your primary line of business. And it'll provide a drop down of different industries that you can choose from. Next, it'll ask you specifically, is your business in any of the following priority industries? Now, these industries have been labeled as particularly hit by COVID. So this will actually increase your availability to secure a grant. So it will bump you higher into the queue for DCEO. Then it'll ask you, do you operate in one of the following industries for which there's a set aside allocation of funds? And that's for restaurants, hotels, and arts organizations that did not receive grants from the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. Now, those have been labeled as particularly hard hit, and in the legislation, they've set out $100 million specifically for those industries. So if you're one of those, a restaurant that did not receive a Restaurant Revitalization Fund grant, a hotel, or an arts organization that did not receive the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, you will also be bumped higher in the queue. And then it will ask you if you received any previous grants. Did you apply for an Illinois Business Interruption Grant in 2020? And it'll ask you if you have received any emergency aid, and it'll ask you to click anything that you received previously. Now, in most cases, if you are a business that did not receive those grant funds, you are eligible and you will be bumped higher in the queue. You'll be given priority in this case. If you did receive funding, if you did receive a grant, it does not mean that you're ineligible. It just means they're going to prioritize those who have not received emergency funds yet. On the next page, it'll ask you some information about your business operations. In what year did your business begin operating? In what month did you begin operating? Where do you conduct business? And then it'll ask you for some information from your tax returns. Your actual 2019 sales or gross receipts as reported on your tax return. Your actual 2020 sales or gross receipts as reported on your tax return. And then it'll ask you this question here. Did you receive assistance from any of the following community navigators? So for instance, today, Waukegan Main Street, the organization that I am with, is one of those members. They are one of those members that are acting as a community navigator. So if you received help from me from this tutorial or from anyone else, you would click from that drop down if you received any assistance. The next step is required documents. So there aren't many required documents that are being asked from you to apply, but there are a few here. So the first one is just simply proof of your identification. So a copy of your driver's license, state ID, or passport. The next one is a business bank statement from between April and December 2020. The next document is the most recent business bank statement that you have. Your 2019 federal tax return, and then your 2020 federal tax return. Finally, if the above documents do not reflect your business address, you'll need an official document to relay that to them. Otherwise, those are all the documents that they'll need from you. The next screen is simply information about your social media presence. So it'll ask you for your website address, Facebook handle, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. If you don't have any of those, don't worry about it. That's okay. Just feel free to leave that blank. The next screen, it'll ask you for some information regarding a W-9. So the first question will be the name as shown on your income tax return. The next one is your business name. And then again, it will ask you for your business ownership structure and then the business mailing address. And based on your W-9 TIN instructions above, it'll ask you if you should use your EIN or social security number. And it'll automatically fill it here. And then it'll ask you to certify that that information is correct. After that, the final page is the attestations page. So it's just going to ask you if you certify that all of the questions in this document you have provided answers that are true. That's all it's asking. You'll click yes, hit complete, and then you've completed the application. After this, you should see a screen that will tell you what number you are at in queue for them to first review the application. And then you should receive some basic information from them about your next steps. Otherwise, it's an easy application to fill out. I encourage everyone to fill it out. There's still plenty of money available, and the DCEO will continue to share this until the $250 million has completely run out. So thank you very much for listening to this tutorial. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly by phone at 847-623-6650 or email me at josh@waukeganmainstreet.org. Thank you.